Welcome, everybody. How you doing? This is Patrick J. Brown, your change architect. I want to welcome everyone to the Change Matters podcast, where we have conversations and creative spaces. I'm here with my guest, Revella Nesbit. How you doing, Revella?
I am well.
I'm so glad you're here.
Very well.
This is awesome. This is so good to have you on. We're going to have a great conversation tonight. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to make sure you tag some people. Please share with your friends. Go ahead and start your shares on your pages. Connect with others. We want to bring you into this conversation. One of the key things you know about this podcast, right, is that if you want to change the direction of a thing, you change the conversation. And in order to change the conversation, many times you have to change who joins it. Well, we have an incredible guest on my podcast. We're here live with you from the Renewal Center here in Concord, North Carolina, in the Charlotte area. So excited about the conversation. I know we've been honoring Mental Health Awareness Month. So because we've been honoring this month, I wanted to have a conversation concerning mental health awareness with someone who has endeavored, who has studied, who's helped develop others as a practitioner in the mental health area. So we're going to dive into that with my guest, and I'll introduce her here shortly, okay? So for those of you that are out there, please go ahead and tag your friends, go ahead and connect with us, and then we'll be right back with my special guest, who is Revella Nesbit. She is the author of Hope Changes Everything. We're going to be discussing your book. Excited about that. She is also the founder and the executive director of Hope Matters, PLLC. She serves as a professional licensed counselor and supervises that process. So please make sure that you tune into us. I'm so looking forward to this dialogue, and I know that you will too. See you in a moment. Well, welcome back again. I am here with Revella Nesbit. This is exciting, folks. We're going to have a good conversation. I want to talk through some things. What's on your heart today? What's going on? How's your week?
Yeah, my week has gone really well. It's just been an exciting time, exciting time in life overall. I'm happy and I'm blessed.
That's good. I'm so glad that you're here. You know, this being Mental Health Awareness Month, I'm so glad that you're on board with this conversation, because many times we don't have conversations about that. And so why do you think that is so?
You know, there's so many reasons. I mean, one is around stigma. You know, there's still an enormous amount of stigma that exists around mental health and mental illness. There's a lot of historical pieces that's factored into how mental health has been defined in many communities, including the Black community. It's been criminalized for many, many years. And so we still have some of those lingering feelings and effects. There's thoughts of stigma around, you know, I didn't pray hard enough, I didn't work hard enough. You know, I'm a failure. You know, if I have to go talk to somebody, then, you know, obviously something's wrong with me. So it's all those thoughts and statements that we continuously have that circle around and just really have embedded us into this level of stigma. But one thing I will say, you know, I would say over the last couple years, especially this past year, there's been a huge movement to be able to get people to talk more about their mental health and their mental wellness. And for that, I'm really excited and grateful that we're changing the conversation.
There it is. Right.
Yes.
We want to change the direction.
Yes.
So we have to change the conversation, host a dialogue, bringing others in who are saying, let's have this dialogue. Let's have this conversation about mental health, but also dig deeper and begin to be transparent about where we are, authentic about what we're experiencing, and hopefully by demonstrating that, other people will come into that as well. So that's one of the key things. So I'm so glad that you're here, and I really appreciate just the level of insight that you have, and I'm looking forward to some more conversations. So share with us a little bit about your business. What do you do? What is it that Hope Matters, PLLC, what is that about?
So I am a woman of many hats, as many of us are.
Yes.
One of the hats that I wear is a licensed professional counselor. And in that role as founder and executive director of Hope Matters here in Charlotte, North Carolina, I get the opportunity to really spend time with individuals and couples and families to really kind of help move them from one sort of challenging place into a much more hopeful, optimistic sort of space. And I do that through the therapeutic process. So I'm really excited to get the opportunity to spend time with people.
And I'm glad that you do what you do. That is so important to us in our communities. Many times, that with the stigma that you talked about, we have to demystify that. How do we get us to a place where we look at our physical health and we do physicals? At least you should do annual physicals, right?
Right, exactly.
And you do a pulse check of your spirit as well.
That's
so
right.
You should have a spiritual health on point.
Right.
But there's also that mental part, which includes our imagination and our memory and our affections, our reasoning faculties, our conscious, our decision making. All those things go into our mental health. And so you help people navigate that.
Yeah, I really do. I help people navigate that. And really, I believe that we all have the answers within us. It's part of my job just to help bring some of those circumstances, situations, some of those strengths and possibilities to the light. Help a person begin to see that and draw on those skills and those strengths, but at the same time help build new skills and new strengths to be able to do that. So I see myself sort of as this, if you will, this architect.
Yes.
That helps people, sort of redesign that part, the emotional part of their lives, to help push them forward. Now, it doesn't mean that it's easy.
Right.
Doesn't mean that it's painless.
Yeah, right.
We do have to dig deep. We do have to consider some things that we haven't considered, or think about some things, whether in the present or the past, that may be operating in a space of influencing us on how we're acting and reacting and behaving, or those things that may stop us from moving forward. So, so we want to sort of create that space where people can be safe and open to have that level of exploration.
I like the word architect. I go by change architect. And when I think about architecture, I think about, specifications, requirements, being deliberate, being intentional, surveying. How do we provide an intentional architecture to our souls? What's your perspective on that? Since using the word architect, can you maybe connect that or synergize that with our emotional life, our mental life, architecture?
That's a great question. Our architect and our emotional life. So when I think about architect and in different structures, I think the beautiful thing in that is that you can take something totally from the ground up, or you can take something, rebuild and redesign.
So from the ground up, rebuild and design. So you got those two different approaches.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Very good.
So it depends. You being an emotional architect, we can work with what you come with, in addition to building on top of that, or we can just start from a blank slate. It just kind of depends on where you want to be and what you want to do and how much transformation you want to be able to engage in. I often say, for me, when folks come to see me and come into my office, one of the things I ask people to do in their own way is to find some way to be able to capture their thoughts. I talk a lot about self-awareness. Journaling is really good and really important, but I always like to give people the space to do that the best way that works for them. Sometimes it's literally pulling out, their journal and writing daily. Some people write daily. Some people, may write whenever it is they're sort of feeling as if they want to jot some things down. And then, I often tell people, you got a note section on your phone because, we're so technologically savvy these days. Put some notes on your phone, capture it in the moment.
Yes.
Whatever way that's going to work for you to have this level of self-awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that helps us architect or helped us rebuild our lives, because you can't begin to change and design what you haven't become aware of. So if you don't know, if you're designing something, let's say this building, if you don't know that the toilet leaks, you're not going to go and fix it.
So awareness is that first stage or step or point of, I'm not going to experience change until I become aware. And why do you think people aren't aware?
It's painful.
Okay.
I think sometimes it's very painful. Sometimes it's hard to bring whatever that is. So if I decide to sort of push it away, if I keep myself busy enough, I really don't have to deal with whatever is going on or whatever that I feel may not be going 100% right. So as long as I'm continuously pushing it away, then I am not fully aware of that. So this level of awareness does bring in, when I say it's not necessarily painless, it's you have to be ready to face those things. And as a therapist, I'm never asking people to face it all at once, to just to lay everything on the table. It's a gradual process to be able to do that. We as therapists really work at the pace of the people we're talking to and that we're working with. But that piece is so very important. You got to have that piece to really move yourself through to the next thing.
So folks, we got to be aware. All right. We've got to be aware, and also aware that we're architects. You literally can design by saying, I want to be aware. And like you said, there's that clean slate that we can just say, okay, let's start fresh. Or this is where we are. Let's really take a good look at this. And I've had to do that too. Like, I don't want to look at this. This is kind of messy. I'm a little embarrassed. My ego gets in the way. My pride gets in the way. Or I reject it so much to where my identity becomes ignoring. And then as a result of that, I carry something I don't need to have. So glad that you mentioned that. So
and I think also it's sometimes people see it as that form of weakness. Like, I am not perfect, and I don't want anybody to know I'm not perfect. So if I acknowledge it, then that acknowledges that I'm really not perfect. So this image I have created may not be who I really am.
Wow. We're diving already into this.
Yes. Good stuff. It's good stuff.
Oh, I love it. So you have all these hats. You've got your job. You've got your business that you run. You're also an author.
I am.
Wow. So words and words. I get excited about words and books. I'm excited about your book. I've read your book. Hope Changes Everything. Folks, this is an incredible book. We're going to dive into this book. You can order Revella's book on Amazon. So you can go ahead and search for her book, Hope Changes Everything, Revella Nesbit. And I'll bring her name and information back up here on the screen so that you can go ahead and search for it while we're in conversation. Tell me a little bit about the background of this book. Why did you write it?
So we talk about, being an architect of your life, right? So I am a person. We talk about perfectionism. Like, sometimes I got that little bit of perfectionism that weighs in on me. And I'm a planner. And so, I like to plan things out. I mean, many of us like to plan how we want, or how we desire our life to be. So in 2011, I was married. My daughter was 8 years old at the time, and had been married for about 15 and a half years. Had been with my husband we've been together for probably a total of about 21 years.
Wow.
And one Sunday morning, the beginning of January, it was on January 2nd, 2011, As I was waking up and he was sort of waking up, he was having a heart attack.
Ugh. Mm.
And within an hour, he had transitioned.
Wow.
And so just that quickly,
Mm-hmm.
my life had changed. Now, for those, of us who had that little touch of perfectionism, that little touch of planning, I
Mm-hmm.
was like, oh my gosh, God, this was not in the plan.
Mm-hmm.
This was not in the plan for today. This was not in the plan for my life. Like, what in the world? What is going
Mm-hmm.
on? So
Yeah.
I was just really just thrown into this place in this space where I had to re-navigate my life and re-navigate what I thought
Mm-hmm.
my life was going to be and what it was going to look like.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, I'm married, 8-year-old daughter.
Oh.
I mean,
Wow.
I felt like we were sort of living the life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We had a nice home. We traveled often.
Yeah.
8 months prior to it, we had just come back. My husband and I had just come back from vacation in Alaska. And so things were good. We were growing spiritually together, serving in our local church. Everything is good, right? And then all of a sudden, life throws you a huge curveball.
Yeah.
And so as I maneuvered through that, and I think one of the things that I carried into that experience was one, a level of resilience.
Mm.
The other is that, I really feel like no matter what happens, that God does things for a reason. I may not fully understand what those reasons are.
Yes.
But he does things for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And so it really put me in this place, in this space. And over time, probably a year and a half afterwards, I really felt like I had something to say. I really had some type of book inside of me.
Yeah.
And hope was the word that really resonated with me.
Mm-hmm.
And so it took me some time to really get my thoughts and everything together and to be able to put them on paper. And so that was how all of this happened. That was the impetus.
Yeah, when I was reading the book, I didn't know all those details. I'm really sorry for that. And thank you for sharing that with us. I wanted to ask more about, tell me how that informs where you are now. How does that shape you where you are now as it relates to that message of hope?
Yeah.
And how hope changes everything.
Without hope, I wouldn't be sitting right here. I think it means everything. I really needed to have something, and I think many people, we need to have something that we can look forward to, something that we can anticipate, something that gets us over the hump into the next thing. So when we think about the last year and COVID, as we were quarantined, wearing masks, 6 feet apart, all of those different things, you hear people would say, oh, I can't wait till life gets back to normal. I can't wait until I could spend time with my family, my friends, with my other relatives, to have family reunions, all of these different things. That to me was that level of hope. So that's what hope sounds like, right?
Okay.
Because we all were hoping
right,
that things would change soon.
Correct.
We were thinking about and considering how things were going to get back to some semblance of normal. So that hope is what we've all been holding on to for the last year plus with COVID. And we're still holding on to that. Every day we seem to get a little closer and a little closer and a little closer. And so I think that's how life is. I think that's, for me, how that circumstance was. It was something that I could hold on to, something that I could just be like, I can see it. It's over there and I can see it. I haven't been able to grasp it just yet, but I can see it, and I can see a clear path to get to that place right up there.
Wow. Folks, this is powerful. Something you wrote in your book, you said, hope in our lives make a profound impact on how we experience life. Life happens. It's how you handle the details of your life circumstances that makes all the difference. Then you say something here: perfection does not exist. So, how do we rebuild, or how do we identify where we are as it relates to this perfectionism, and how bad, and when we experience something that hits us, do we take it harder? Do we have a difficult time navigating because of perfectionism or planning, or is it just the shock of it?
Mm-hmm. So I think when I say perfectionism doesn't exist, we're not perfect.
Right.
God didn't make us perfect.
Right.
He allowed us a level of grace, and I think we have to always extend that level of grace to ourselves.
Yes.
And we have to make sure that we are maneuvering through life in a way that we're not so hard on ourselves. And that's what perfectionism does. It puts us in a place where everything has to be right all the time. We have to be photo ready, picture ready. The perfect image of whatever it is that you are operating in, or whatever it is that you're existing in. We don't often allow ourselves that space to be less than perfect. Human.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes, unfortunately, our religious mindsets inform us to be perfect. And we miss the fact that we're human beings, humans becoming, and humans that are in a life journey of transformation. So you're helping us today, because many times when we are going through, and I've been through this too, where it's like, this is not supposed to happen. I don't like it. It's not supposed to happen. How dare this situation take place? Well, you're a human being. That's where you are. You're human becoming, because you're still experiencing this journey, and you're still here. You're breathing, which means hope is still available.
Right. Hope is still available, and it's still there. It's still there.
Tell me a little bit more about the whole aspect of, the emptiness that happens when we don't have hope, or when people who are hopeless. You talk about hopelessness in here, and there's an area you talk about some research you've done on different hopelessness areas.
Yeah. So I'm gonna pull up my book.
Let's dive into
on
it.
Page 10 of the book, and so it talks about 9 different forms of hopelessness. So there's doom, and I'm not going to go into all the descriptions of it because I want you to get the book. So there's doom, there's helplessness, there's captivity, feeling limited, being oppressed, powerless, uninspired, and feeling forsaken and alienation. So I really started thinking about, where was I? Where was I during that time? Where did I settle in any of these 9 forms of hopelessness? And I think about feeling forsaken. I think for a period of time, I had a feeling of feeling forsaken. I asked myself, why, God, like, you brought all these things to me. You said, you're going to be with me.
Wow.
And I was feeling as if there was a part of me that said, God, are you here? Are you able to see my pain? Are you able to be in this experience with me? Now, I grew up in the church, so I knew that he was there with me.
Sure.
But I'm in the midst of this level of pain and just a level of hopelessness. And I will say one of the scriptures that carried me through is in Psalms, and it talks about God putting our tears in a bottle.
Yes.
And when I read that scripture, that gave me such comfort, because it wasn't just that he cared enough to capture them.
Wow, cared enough to capture.
That'll
preach. Cared enough to capture. All right. Yes, he did. All right, sorry.
He cared enough to capture every single tear. But But the other thing was, none of the tears were wasted. None of them were wasted.
Mm.
So it was not for naught.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He cared enough,
Mm-hmm.
and he didn't waste a tear.
I'm so glad you sharing this, because even you started out by saying, where was I? So you did self-awareness.
Mm-hmm.
I also want you to unpack a little bit about that. You were asking questions. Can you share some things? Because you have a unique blend of theology, psychology, mental health, education, all that in one. Why it's okay to have questions.
Yeah. I think I will speak for myself.
Please.
I think I grew up in a church environment, spiritual environment, in which I was shunned for asking God questions.
Mm.
And, it was like, oh, you don't question God, you don't question. I remember saints in the church saying that.
Mm-hmm.
And, as I grew more spiritual growth and just more mature, I was like, God can handle the questions.
Mm-hmm.
He wants us to engage with him.
Yeah.
And so, as I really came into the knowledge and the understanding that no question is too big, and trusted the process that over time that God will reveal those answers to me.
Yeah.
Then I began to be okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
We often say, why God, why? And then we talk about perspective, and I began to shift my perspective. Why not?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why not me? I'm not perfect.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm pretty special and pretty awesome.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean that I am. I don't go through difficult times and difficult circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that goes along with life. In the book, The Road Less Traveled, the first sentence is, life is difficult. And life is difficult.
Yeah. I'm glad that you share that, because I think sometimes people think, especially when we're teaching people to have a relationship with God, why would you want to have a relationship with God or a person or a being and not be able to even have questions? Relationship requires communication, which requires a dialogue.
Yes.
So it's not just, God, I got this, and I'm saying this. I want to have some conversation with you. I look at the book of Habakkuk, and Habakkuk writes, Lord, how long are you going to let me see this iniquity? You see all this killing, you see all these murders, you see this injustice. Lord, what's going on? But then in chapter 2, he ends up getting a vision. So he wasn't able to get to the vision without the questions.
Yeah.
So when you were asking questions, how did you navigate not having answers, but then the vision emerging with hope?
Oh my goodness. That's a good question. Such a good question. I believe that God, so when we ask questions, there are different ways that God may choose to deliver those answers and those responses.
Yeah.
So part of me knowing myself is knowing that God deals with me in dreams a lot. And they're not always in its entirety. They're pieces. Probably because God knows if he tells me everything, I probably wouldn't know how to act. So he tells me in pieces, and he tells me along the way. So when you talk about visions and dreams, I think it's one of the things that I was able to just tune in to how God communicates with me. And God communicates with people different ways. But he communicated with me through dreams and through visions. And so that is how I feel like I really was able to push through and get through. So I'm gonna drop a little something on you. I didn't intend to say this, but I'm gonna say it because I think the time is right to be able to say this. During that moment, as my husband is transitioning, I'm downstairs. The paramedics the police, the firemen, and the ambulance, the paramedics, all are upstairs. I'm downstairs with my sister, with my daughter. We're just down there, just really just kind of trying to take in this moment as they continue to work on him to revive him.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say in that moment, and I had to check with my sister on this because she was there with me. In that very moment, I heard my husband laugh.
Wow.
And say, I'm okay. I'm okay. And I stopped. I looked around and I said to my sister, did you hear that? And she said, yeah, I heard that. So I run back upstairs because I said, oh, it's okay. I go back upstairs. They're still working on him.
Wow.
He's unconscious.
Wow.
So for me, because I have that level of self-awareness of tuning in how God speaks to me,
Mm-hmm.
I was able to receive that in that moment. And so that's something that's carried me throughout, that at different times God is going to tell me, and he said to me in that moment, it's okay. I'm okay. And that's just carried me. That's really just something that's carried me throughout.
That's powerful that your self-awareness also includes how you communicate with God. Because sometimes people communicate with God many times based upon how they were reared or raised from a religious perspective, but clearly this shows relationship is so important.
It is extremely important.
And how you've taken the time to become accustomed with the voice of the Lord and how God speaks directly to you, whether it be through a dream, whether it be through vision, whether through what you heard that helped you sustain you. So how does that translate in the area of self-awareness? Because you have an acronym here called HOPE, and we're not going to go through all the entire acronym because we need people to get the book. But
yes.
One of the things that you said was the posture of gratitude.
Yeah.
And the familiar, the unfamiliar, the big and small things, the conscious and the unconscious blessings. So how does awareness relate to that?
Yeah. I think it's bringing it back to really considering what are those things that we are really grateful for. I think there are things in our lives that we totally take for granted. We just assume that they are going to be there. So I made an assumption that I was going to be married for a really long time.
Right.
All was going to be well. And, all of that. And so in that loss, I then reframed that for me and thought, God gave me this appointed time, those years with him. And so I have to be grateful for that time.
When you say reframe, break that down for us. What does it mean to reframe?
So a reframe means to begin to think about whatever your circumstance is a little differently, to frame it differently, and so instead of focusing on the negative, right? So I could focus on my loss. I could focus on my loss all day, every day.
Okay.
I could walk up to people and woe is me, and this is what happened to me. So my reframing it to me in that situation or that circumstance became, I am grateful for that time that I did have. I may not have additional time, but I'm grateful. There are things that I learned in that time and in that season that's going to carry me to the next thing. So I'm reframing it. I'm reframing my perspective on it. I'm reframing how I think about it. So I often talk with people when you're going through loss, whether it's you lost someone to death or or separation or divorce or distance, whatever it is, or lost a job, you know, to refocus on, you know, what are you grateful for during that time and during that season? Don't always focus on the negative pieces of that. Focus on the positive, because there are lessons that have come out of that. I would like to think, I would really like to think that when I am able to get married again, that all of that good, that I'll bring all that good and all the things that I probably didn't do as right, I'll bring that, and I would bring it in a place, in a space that's only going to accentuate that next thing and that next level.
Wow. And if we don't reframe,
I think you often stay in this place of woe is me, a lot of regret. I think you stay in a place of hopelessness, because that's what you're thinking about.
Wow. Wow.
That's what you're thinking about.
I find it powerful because there are times when we don't reframe, we get our identity from a traumatic situation. And if we don't reframe, I'm thinking like a picture frame. We can't see outside of that picture frame,
right? Because
we're in those borders,
right?
And we don't even know there's more outside of that.
Yeah.
Because we're not willing to step outside of that frame.
Right. Sometimes we get stuck. Sometimes we get stuck in a place of grief. And again, grief and loss can happen, not just with death, but with the loss of anything. We get stuck there. I think that's why you often see people. Let's say, for example, if you lost someone to death, you often see people create foundations, create associations and groups to be able to honor the memory of that person. That's a form of reframing it. That's a form of reframing it to the extent that you're using that to be able to help someone else, to be able to share what you have learned from that experience, to be able to help someone else through that next thing, that next opportunity. And I think, you know, I've had so many opportunities that God has sent me with people who've lost people in their lives. And so part of my reframe is, how can I help that person to move through that situation? That's
very helpful. You know, how do we now, like you started out talking about self-awareness, right? You asked yourself, where am I in these 9 areas of hopelessness? Now we're shifting to reframing. And so part of reframing is awareness. Locating yourself is what I like to call it. And I think it's important that we look at different stages in our lives and say, okay, what do I need to reframe? So that's really making me think about that. Anytime we have a loss or a traumatic situation, you know, Holy Spirit, what do you want to reframe in me?
Yeah.
Holy Spirit, how can you help me reframe this moment? God, I invite you into this, my soul. You know, I think it was David said, I bless the Lord at all times. And he talks about how, oh, magnify the Lord with me, right? He talks about magnifying the Lord, or my soul does magnify the Lord. And all that's within me, bless his holy name. What's in you? So we have to ask ourselves, if I'm going to bless it, oh, my soul, and all that's within me, bless his holy name, then the question now is, what's in me? Right.
And it really, and I think you got to draw on that which is in you. So
what's
we go back to the architect and the foundation. So sometimes it may be that there are things we need to add to that level of foundation that we have, and that foundation could be skills and tools out of our toolbox. Sometimes that are tools that we already have. Sometimes it's people helping us, you know, through that, to be able to give us additional tools to be able to build on that. to be able to see what we really have in us. You know, I think hope
Wow,
also
that's great.
pulls that out of us because it really pulls and tugs on our ability to see beyond our current state and our current situation. So in order to have hope, you got to see beyond where you are. You got to go past that. It's not you. You can't just stay here. You gotta see across the horizon.
And you connected reframing to learning. So you're saying that as hope or part of reframing exists in hope, which gives you the ability to see something you have not seen before. Sometimes you're seeing something that's already in you.
Yes. And it goes to this idea of reimagining.
Reimagining.
So reimagining.
Okay.
Reimagining and rethinking. You know, we all, like I said earlier, we have these thoughts and these dreams of how life is supposed to be and what we're going to do and all of that. But imagine if you had the opportunity just to kind of reimagine what it is and where it is that you're going. You know, and sometimes a crisis or a traumatic experience puts us in a place where forces us to reimagine what is actually possible.
Wow.
Yeah.
So reframing, reimagining, seeing beyond where you are.
Yeah, absolutely.
And as we reframe, let's do some more words. Are we repositioning ourselves?
We are repositioning ourselves. We're repositioning ourselves and I think reinventing ourselves to some extent.
Okay.
So you talk about change, right? And you talk about transformation. So when we go through a situation or a circumstance, whatever it is, let's say you lost your job and you then have to think, okay, how can I reinvent myself? How can I reimagine what my career is going to be and what it's going to look like? We can go back to all of COVID, right? We all have had to reimagine what life is going to look like beyond COVID. We had to reimagine how we're going to stay in touch with people while we were quarantined. I think these are things that we do day in and day out and really don't think about it. But I'm just encouraging you to kind of push forward and go beyond that box and think bigger. Think about how you pivot. You know, that was the conversation over the last year. Companies and organizations pivoting.
Yes, that's right.
That's refocusing.
Yeah.
Reimagining what
disruptive.
It's disruptive.
Yes, it is.
And people did that one out of necessity because they wanted to be able to survive beyond what was happening because they saw what was going on currently wasn't quite going to work in the future. But we had to rethink that, and we had to step outside and get creative, and what that was going to look like. And so many of us considered, you know, what strengths do we have? What can we draw on? And we can only do that if we had the hope that it was going to work.
Yes.
The hope, the anticipation that there was going to be something good that was going to come out of that.
Reframing.
Yeah.
Reimagining. Repositioning. Reinventing. We're going to go on a retour. Wow. Revella.
Yes, that
too. Revella reveal. Yeah. That's powerful. I think it's important. That's a huge takeaway, I think, for most of us, that can we spend more time in reframing and refocusing. One of the things that you have in your book, you talk about reimagining. I don't see reframing in here, so you're going to have to elaborate that.
Yeah, we're gonna
maybe
add
a little bit more of that to it. You just extracted that for us today.
Yes.
You also talk about hoping in looking at the reality of something unexpected comes. So what I'm learning from you today is that in reframing, when something unexpected happens, I am pliable or I'm like wet cement in the hand of God or in the hand of life, that I'm
Mhm.
pliable enough that I'm going to get some reinvention, even if I don't fully understand what I'm experiencing.
Yeah.
That there's an area that about myself that I really would not have known had I not taken the time, again, going back to our first point, of being self-aware.
Yeah. It's really, it is being pliable, right? And that's what change does. That's and sometimes change happens out. Sometimes it's internal and sometimes it's external. So a job loss is external, right? So it pushes you in a place that you have to think about and consider things differently. Sometimes that's internal. Sometimes we make a decision to do something differently. Maybe it's, becoming healthier or, exercising more or whatever it is. I mean, sometimes that drive is internal. We want to be a better friend. We want to gossip less. We want to show up more. Those are internal decisions that we make. Again, then there are those external ones. But I think all in all, we want to make sure that we're looking at sort of this opportunity. So change happens. Let's just all agree.
Yeah.
Change happens.
Change matters.
Whether we want it to or not.
Yeah.
Things change. Organizations change. We pivot. We pivot in our lives. We pivot in jobs, and companies pivot. All of that kind of stuff. One of the things about change is, how are you going to adapt to that level of change? Now, I will say, God knows me, Lord, God knows me. I go through this phase of sort of just kicking and screaming, right? Like, God may say, or something maybe sort of shifting in my life. And I don't know about, the listeners, but I go through this phase where I'm pouting. And I'm like, why God? Why me? Why'd you do this? And I negotiate. Right? You're like, God, okay, if I did this, then what about this? And, so I go through all these different things. And then I finally get to the place of, okay, I get a little more resigned. Like, okay, God, what you need me to do? What you want me to do? And so it's often some of us go through those phases slower.
Yeah.
Some of us go through them a lot faster.
Yeah.
I try to be a quick learner because sometimes the lessons can be really hard. Yeah. So I try to be a quick learner. I'm not always that way.
But we don't have to be perfect.
We don't have to be perfect. That's
we've
right.
established that.
That's right.
So we're free.
We are free.
We are free.
We are free. But that's part of the change process.
Yeah, right? It is.
To get to that place where you see that there is a need for something different. And on the other side of it is scary. It can be very scary because there's that unknown territory. So consider if you're starting a whole new career and it's like, oh my goodness, you wonder about whether you're going to be good enough.
The unknown can be terrifying.
Yeah, it can be totally terrifying.
Absolutely can.
Yeah, but hope kind of continues to push us forward.
Yeah. I appreciate your transparency with that because there's not this expectation that you have to have it all together, every duck in the row, and I'm so grateful. I'm thinking about the scripture that talks about how God's strength is made perfect in my weakness. God's strength is perfected where I am weak, and that so I can embrace my weak place, knowing that in that reframing, there's going to be some strength that the Holy Spirit's going to bring in my life because I'm willing to embrace where I am.
Right.
So you're helping us, you're freeing us because, we all have our little proclivities. We have spots and areas that are still being worked on because we are clay in the potter's hands. So tell me a little bit more about the outcome of this book. I want to pause here for a moment and just remind the audience the name of Revella's book is Hope Changes Everything. Revella Nesbit, Nesbit. As you can see, it is streaming at the bottom. So Hope Changes Everything. Order it directly right out of Amazon. All right. And it's $10?
Yes.
Okay. On Amazon. So, and also with the hard copy, because I have notes. All right. I've already gone through it. Also, you can get you an e-copy as well. All right. For your Kindle. So you can order both. That'll be great. Make this investment in yourself. Many of us have gone through losses. Many of us have had expectations of how life was supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
I've had it myself,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we go through these turns and these bends in the road, and hope is what's going to help us.
Right.
So what are some of the outcomes that you want the audience, myself, and others, and readers as well, to benefit from how hope changes everything? What are some of the other outcomes?
Yeah. So, I want people to have a level of freedom. So this idea of freedom, if we mentioned it earlier, what was something that really came out of our earlier conversation. But this level of freedom, of being able to just think beyond our current situation, think beyond what it is that we thought. Because I think sometimes our thoughts can be limiting, right? It's based on what we know and what we see, and oftentimes what we experience. But there are those opportunities that really expand beyond that. And so I want people to have the freedom to be able to hope and continue to hope, to continue to press on, to be able to hang in there. It's one of the topics in the book. It's like that's like the first thing. Sometimes we get in a place where we're so just dismayed, and feeling so hopeless that we just need to tie a knot and just be able to hang on, to get through day by day by day. And sometimes that may be when we talk about sort of regrouping. That was another concept that's in the book around regrouping. When you think about when you want to regroup, I don't know why I think about like papers or cards or something on the table, and they're all scattered, and you want to be able to kind of group things together, and so like your life happens, right, and then it's all scattered around, and you gotta think about, okay, how can I find the place and the space for the things in my life, right? So regrouping helps us begin to put things in its proper place. Some things we may be like, you know what, that didn't serve me well. So I'm not gonna do that anymore, or I'm not going to continue to participate in that activity, or that person, that relationship didn't serve me as well. So I'm going to regroup. I'm going to regroup and rethink about what's my focus now, and where do I need to consider things to be different. So one of the things in which, after the loss of my husband, I was fortunate to have the opportunity to be able to take some extended time away from work. So I was able to be home for 2 months. And it really gave me the opportunity to really rethink and regroup. I mean, simple things like buying a gallon of milk. I didn't need to buy a gallon I don't even drink milk. So I was buying a gallon of milk for my daughter and my husband, right? So I'm like, we don't need a gallon of milk. And it really took me weeks to stop buying a gallon of milk. Like I really had to like regroup. It was like, okay, who's going to cut the grass? I really had to get down to the basics. What is it going to take for me in this moment and in this time just to survive? I had sometimes we got to go back to the basics. Okay. I just needed to survive. I needed to really tend to my soul and really just focus on those things that were most pressing. I didn't need the extra things. I didn't need the extra worries. I didn't need any of that. I need to focus on, okay, I have a daughter that's 8 years old, and I need to focus my time and my energy on how best I'm going to be a single parent and what that's going to look like. Because that's not something I had imagined.
Correct. Yeah.
I didn't imagine it.
Yeah.
So it wasn't in my thought process. So I had to think about what was that going to look like for me? How was I going to regroup my life to be able to now serve where I was. So there was some things I pulled away from. Some responsibilities I pulled away from because I just needed to do that in that season. And I had to be okay with that.
So sometimes we have to, so regrouping, reframing, pulling back, readjusting, because now I have this is new to me. I and it's okay to say, I don't know. Right.
It is
at that
absolutely
time.
Okay. Yeah. It's absolutely okay to say, I don't know.
It's powerful.
And it's okay to not be able to do everything that you were able to do prior.
Say that again.
It's okay not to be able to do everything that you were doing prior to that.
Did y'all hear that? It's okay.
It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's okay. Because we have to just think about what is it that I need right now. And I would say, I don't want folks to think that everything is wonderful, great.
Right.
I'm not perfect, remember?
No.
We're not perfect.
We're okay. We are free from perfection.
I still have moments in which, all of this kind of comes back, for me. This and other struggles that I've had, over my life, they come back to me and they rest on me. And so then I have to fight my way back out of that. So please, I don't want people to think that, this is a Pollyanna, everything's wonderful in Revella's life. And, she just keeps going forward. And because I'm like, what's my choice? I gotta keep moving. I gotta keep moving. But I also have to think about what is it that I need, right? So my pulling back over that period of time was, just to make sure my basic needs were taken care of. And then as I was strengthened, I was able to add more things onto my plate. I was able to do more. And, I was able to, see and refocus in a way that I could see sort of a different type of future, right? And so, I now don't, this has allowed me not to put limits on what's possible.
Wow.
Yeah, I've had to take that step back and not put those limits on what's possible. For a long time, because I'm a planner, right? And so I always think about, okay, what's my 3-month plan? What's my 6-month plan? What's my 9-month plan? So I've really backed off of a little bit of that. I'm still a planner. I've backed off a little bit of that because I need that room to be able to be flexible enough and agile enough to be able to see what's going to be next and what's going to happen, right? So I have this framework, but I have this level of flexibility within that framework that I am so not tied to, because there are new ideas and new thoughts that are always sort of coming. And hope generates that, right? So if I didn't have hope I wouldn't be thinking all of these new things and these new possibilities. I wouldn't be transforming. I wouldn't be pivoting in ways that would then take me to the next thing, right? So it's like I want to stay agile and flexible enough to be able to be ready for whatever that next thing is, and not put a limit on God. Right? So when I have this sort of static dream, then I'm putting a limit on God.
Static dream. Wow.
I'm saying, okay, this is how it's supposed to be. Right? When I was younger, we used to have so many little games that we played, but we used to play all these little games like, there's, all these little pity pat games, and it would define, okay, you're going to have, a husband and 3 kids and live in a house like this, and I realized that that just puts like this limit, right? This limit on, what my future can be. And so now I've learned that, and through this journey, I've really learned to not put a limit on myself.
That's powerful. And you've helped us with regrouping and reframing. So what's next for you? You've got your book, and again, we have it streaming at the bottom. Hope changes everything. You're also speaking. Are you being booked right now or doing virtual sessions, as well as your counseling practice?
Yes.
Okay.
I am continuing my counseling practice and fully enjoying that, and really enjoying spending time with people and really helping them move to that, whatever that place is that they want to be, whether that's the struggles that they may have in life transitions, whatever that life transition is, anxiety, depression, just so many different things. And so I am really excited about having the opportunity to do that. So yes, continue with that, continue with various speaking engagements, training opportunities. Now that we are coming out of COVID, I think it's really going to afford us some opportunities to really just get before people and talk, especially women. Women are definitely, working with women is definitely a passion.
Okay. Awesome. Well, I tell you, this has been a hearty, rich conversation. We're not only just about your life story, which I thank you for sharing that, and your authenticity and transparency about it. In addition to that, you've also shared some pointed focus in the area of reframing that I think everyone can identify with. So I want to encourage everyone, please make sure that you go on Amazon and order Revella's book, Hope Changes Everything. I appreciate you being on here on my podcast today. I hope this has been a fruitful conversation for everyone. Any last few words you want to share with the audience before we go?
Hope changes everything.
Yes, it does. Hope matters. Change matters. Hope changes everything. I want to encourage you to reframe, to refocus, to regroup. Take this time to order this book. Apply it to your life. One key thing about changing the direction of things is changing the conversations. Perhaps it's time to reframe your conversations and reframe who joins your conversation. So again, thank you for connecting, being a part of my Change Matters podcast today with my guest, Revella Nesbit. And again, remember, I'm Patrick Brown, your change architect. Change matters. See you next time.